Hi, Josh.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for taking the time to do this interview.
You're welcome.
Oh, awesome. Well, it's great to be able to talk to you and talk about such a great album that's going to be coming out 2 weeks from today through Frontiers Music, the brand new album from Dukes of the Orient with Freakshow.
That's right. I'm really excited about it. It's we spent most of last year making the album before all this craziness with the virus happened, and at least we're going to get some good news finally with this album coming out. So 2 weeks will be here before you know it.
Oh yes, and yeah, we really need some good things going on right now, and it's great to see that this is still coming out in 2020. It didn't get delayed indefinitely or coming out in 2021. I mean, we need some good music going on right now, and I'm glad to see that it's still coming out.
Definitely. You know, we were lucky enough to get the album done at the end of last year, so this didn't affect that, but we did actually have some trouble with our video plans because we had this big vision about how we're going to get the whole band together on a sound stage and do a big performance video with, cranes and lights and smoke and all that kind of stuff. And that just wasn't possible, once this whole virus thing happened. So we ended up shooting kind of a guerrilla video for the first song. John lives in Las Vegas, the vocalist, and so he brought a friend of his over who's a cameraman and just shot, some video of him walking and singing in the wash behind his house. And I had a friend come over to my studio up in Northern California and just shoot me at my keyboard rig. And we had footage of Frank Klepacki, the drummer, from the actual recording session, because I always put up a GoPro behind the drummer when I'm cutting drums. I don't know, it's just like a compulsive thing I do. And then we just sent all the footage to the label, and they were kind enough to edit it together and, stitch it into something reasonable looking. So it wasn't exactly the big, mega rock and roll video production we had in mind, but at least we got something out.
Oh yeah, and I actually do appreciate that kind of approach to it. I mean, there's an authenticity that's going on with that video in question with the monitors. I mean, the fact that it does feel very real, and you didn't need any special effects for it. I mean, it feels like a real thing, and it's awesome to see that, especially with being able to see the way you play, see how the drums are recorded. I love that kind of stuff when it comes to videos.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear that. That's a good way to look at it, and I'm glad it hits you that way.
Oh, totally. And, obviously, I mean, if everything would have came to vision and you were able to make the video that you wanted to make, I mean, obviously that would have been a great thing as well, too. But, the fact that there was able to be a plan B like this, it's great to see that it did come together the way that it did.
Definitely. And I was speaking with someone yesterday, in the round of interviews, and he said, "I'm just so happy you guys didn't do one of those Zoom videos where you just are all in little squares on Zoom." And I said, "What, you mean like the Brady Bunch kind of look or something?" And so that was the big joke. So at least we didn't do this. At least we didn't do the Zoom video.
Oh, totally. So with that in mind, I mean, obviously with getting this album done at the end of last year, I mean, what's it been like actually sitting on this album this whole time?
That's the record business. John Payne and I have been doing this for a long time. Him longer than me, and you get used to just kind of keeping a secret for 6 months. You finish up the album. Well, in this case, gosh, it's going to be 8.5 months. It's like making a movie. I imagine you put all this work into it, and it's a huge part of your life for in this case, most of 2019. And then you have your reference CD or the MP3s on your iPhone, and you listen to it in the car and play it for friends and things. But you got to keep it a secret basically for half a year or more, and that's just part of the music business, I guess.
Oh, totally. And I can just imagine, especially with just like you said, being in the music industry as long as so many members of the band has. I mean, the fact that you do have to hold on to the secrets, hold on to these songs for X amount of months or whatever the case is, and again with the scare that was going on here with 2020 and the pandemic that's going on, and not knowing what's going to be happening in the future. I mean, obviously that's going to shake things up a bit, but the fact that everything did get recorded, everything did come out so amazingly well. I love everything that's going on here, musically, lyrically, the way that you guys are writing songs together. It feels like it's such an improvement and such a stronger way to go about from the debut album. I mean, everything just feels so much tighter.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. The first album, it took 10 years for that to come together. We wrote the first song, Strange Days, on that album in 2008, I believe. And then with all the touring with Asia featuring John Payne and just member changes and all that, it was 2018 before that album finally came out. And of course, we renamed the band as Dukes of the Orient. So that was a production that took place over a period of 10 years. And in many ways, it sounds like that. You know, there's a lot of different moods and atmospheres on the album, and just different colors from recording in different studios and with different musicians. On this new album, the Freakshow album, it was all done in one studio with the same 5 musicians. The actual recording was just done over, a couple months' time. And so I think it's a lot more cohesive sounding and just a lot more focused, because it was, done in the traditional way you make an album. You get a bunch of guys together in a room, you record music, and you get it done. You don't let it linger for years and years at a time.
Yeah, and it's sometimes that has become a lost art, actually getting together and writing and recording in the same room. And I always hear it in an album when an album is done like over the internet or just written by one person and other people record tracks in different studios. But I always notice on a studio album, there's just a different feeling behind it when everyone is in the studio being able to record, everyone's there to be able to hear the tracks and make sure the songs are going to be the best they can possibly be all together.
That's right. And I think that's so important to creating, the actual vibe of a band. When we were recording the drums for this album, we recorded the drums by themselves, just kind of out of necessity. John has a really nice studio in his house in Las Vegas. It's kind of a big open stone room. So it's, got a really nice live feeling. And then we bring in, baffles to tame it down depending on, the track. But he has his grand piano set up in the same room, and the guitar amps are set up in the same room. So we would actually, the 3 of us sit there and work out things playing it live. And then, then Frank would go cut the drums on his own to our reference tracks, of course. But that was basically just done for isolation purposes. But I mean, we literally would play a song with the 3 of us, and then John and I'd walk into the control room and then record the drums. So it was very collaborative in that way, and no one was emailing in their tracks or anything like that, happily.
And with that in mind, I mean, being on both sides of the fence when it comes to that, I mean, what do you prefer doing? I mean, either like getting the tracks sent to you online and being able to work on them by yourself, or do you like working as a band cohesively?
I've done it both ways, of course. I have a really nice studio up here in Northern California with 100 synthesizers and my giant modular Moog system and all of that. So obviously I've done lots of recording here, but it's something else when you can go into a proper studio and you just get to be a musician. I guess I could show up and just play the piano, or just play the Hammond organ, or just play keyboards, and I don't have to be the recording engineer and anything like that. That there's actually someone else there who's the recording engineer, and you just get to be the artist. So if I had it my way, I mean, I would do it that way all the time. But, our modern world doesn't allow that in a lot of cases. So you kind of have to be ready for anything, I suppose.
Oh, definitely. And, with everyone in this band, I mean, all of you have such amazing backgrounds and, obviously lots of other bands and projects that you guys get to work on. So, I mean, the fact that this album came together the way that it has and all of you were able to get together in the same studio and record this thing, I mean, it's really great to see that considering everything that you got going on.
Definitely. And we were happy that we were able to pull it off that way. It was done as just about as analog as possible. So, we recorded everything through a proper recording desk with all, analog outboard gear and so forth. We still recorded into Pro Tools. But we used Pro Tools basically as a tape deck. So there were no plugins or anything like that. that it was all done very much old school, and the instruments were the same way. I played real grand piano, real Rhodes and Wurlitzer, electric piano, Hammond organ, even a little bit of mellotron here and there, and of course, the various Moog synthesizers and so forth. So I think that all gives the production an interesting depth, especially like a front to back depth that you don't hear on an all digital, like in the box production. So I think the fact that, we all played in the same room, things were recorded in the same room, maybe not at the same time, but in that same room over a very short period of time, combined with this, kind of old school analog recording approach. I think the whole vibe makes it sound like, a classic band album and not, just a series of overdubs, that you put in a Dropbox or send over the internet somehow.
Oh, totally. And yeah, I mean, that's what I do appreciate so much about it production-wise is, obviously even using Pro Tools as like a tape deck, I mean, I can still hear the warmth that's going on there. I mean, you're not hearing like those dead robotic plugins that's going on, which you can do from everything from drum samples to guitars effects to key synths. I mean, everything that can happen nowadays with plugins. I mean, the fact that it was all real, what was going on there, everything that comes from the original equipment is going into this album and just having that great warm feeling behind it. And you can hear it when you listen to the album, which is so appreciated.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad that comes through because it's obviously a lot easier to just do things in the box. And not have to worry about, pulling out the old rack of 1176s and, Neve preamps and all that kind of thing. We mixed it the same way, of course. And I live about 1,000 miles away from John. I live in Northern California, and John is down in Las Vegas. So normally I would fly out there for our sessions, but when he was getting ready to mix, I actually drove because I brought a bunch of kind of rare equipment to use on the mix. Like I have an old Lexicon 224X digital reverb, which was like, that's kind of like the Vangelis Blade Runner sound. And of course it's beautiful on drums and on vocals and anything. And then another vintage reverb called a Quantec Room Simulator, which is this weird German reverb from like 1982 or something. That's really like the sound of a lot of the Trevor Horn productions and, that kind of early to mid 80s reverb sound. And to me, that kind of processing goes really well with the analog recording and those kinds of instruments. So I ended up bringing just a big pile of stuff like that out to John's studio that we used on the mix. So it was a big commitment, definitely. So I'm happy to hear that you noticed the difference.
Oh, yeah. And like I said, that's so appreciated, too. And, the fact that you did bring all that equipment and drove, 2,000 miles round trip, I mean, that's just awesome to see that you really do have that commitment behind it to get the best possible sounds and production that you can.
That's right. And the idea is that, okay, this is a little bit of an inconvenience right now, but this album is going to, live for a lot of years. So let's make sure we don't have any regrets. And we're listening to this album 20 years from now, you don't want to go, oh man, I really wish I would have brought that, better compressor or that, better reverb unit. Or so, we just put everything we had into it. And I've tried to do that as much as possible in music production because, it doesn't matter that someone is listening to, a crappy MP3 file on earbuds on the subway. There's also someone that's going to be listening to it in their, $250,000 home theater or something. And just making the source material as good as it can possibly be, you're never going to regret doing that.
Oh, absolutely. So, with that in mind, I mean, obviously thinking about that when it comes to the production side, I mean, when switching it up to your side on the keys, I mean, what is it like to be able to decide what kind of setup you're going to be using for the songs? Because, what's shown in the monitors, I mean, you have such a amazing monster setup and you have all these different types of sounds that you can make. I mean, what is that like for you to be able to go through all of that and picking the right sounds out?
Sometimes it's option anxiety where you go, okay, I need to play a synth pad. Okay, well, I have 100 different synthesizers I could do that with. There's 10 that probably would do it better than the other 90. And of those 10, well, these 4 maybe. And, you basically just have to make a style choice. And I think it's also important not to use everything and to keep it focused, so the album does have some cohesiveness. Talking about synth pads, since I brought that up, I used this instrument called a memory mode, which is a polyphonic mode synthesizer from the mid 80s. And it's a pretty exotic synth by today's standards, and, kind of a vintage find and coveted classic instrument, I guess. But I just love the sound of it. And I chose that basically to use for all of the pad sounds on the album. So when you hear like the synth pads and the monitors, the video, and then you hear that same kind of sound on the rest of the album, it's the same synth. So it wasn't like I said, okay, well, I'm going to use the memory moog on this, and I'm going to use the Oberheim OBXA on this song, and then I'm going to use the Yamaha CS80 on this song. I tried to kind of have a vision with the gear as well. You think about a good example would be like Neil Peart from Rush, who of course we recently lost. He would change up his drum kit on every album. You'd see this amazing, okay, Tama, whatever, okay, and the next album he's using this DW, some cool DW thing, and then the next album he's using, who knows, Premiere this or Ludwig this. And it's just cool to, build a sound for a particular album with specific instruments. And it's not only what instruments you use, it's what instruments you don't use. And I think keeping it focused like that is part of what gives the album, a nice cohesiveness.
Oh, yeah. Again, that's what I appreciate so much. I mean, with the fact that you have so much amazing equipment that you've been able to have over the years, when it comes to production and keys and synths, the fact that you can still be able to find that perfect sound that you're looking for and be able to have that cohesiveness, and obviously being able to change some things up once in a while, but when it comes to an album, making sure that it's going to have that cohesive sound and not everything is going to be so out of place or different sounding when it comes to an album, because you want to be able to have that album experience from start to finish.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, and that's really how I approached it.
Oh, that's so cool. So, with that in mind, I mean, obviously there's so much that went into it when it comes into the songwriting and the production. Another thing I do appreciate is the simpleness that really goes into the album artwork. I love the purple that's going on with it, and just a very simplistic. Like, how did that album artwork come together?
Well, John Payne is very good friends with an artist named Rodney Matthews, and Rodney had done several of the Asia album covers in the 90s, going into the early 2000s. The Aqua album, or Aqua as they call it in England, and some of the ones after that, the Arena album, and I forget which other ones, those all had Rodney Matthews artwork. And Rodney's done, artwork for so many great artists. He did a Rolling Stones album cover, Uriah Heep, Magnum, Rick Wakeman, I believe Oliver Wakeman, his son, used some Rodney Matthews artwork. And so when we were releasing the first album, it was just natural that we asked Rodney to make a logo. And he came up with this idea of like the lions with the sword and all of that. And we were trying to come up with artwork concepts, and I forget who it was, but someone just said, what if we just have this logo on this, kind of yellow background? It'll just make that logo look so much more powerful rather than having it competing against like a busy image behind it. So that's how it happened on the first album. And then when we went to do the second album, we were looking at, different kind of font styles for the Freakshow title. And then we came up with the one that we used. And that was so striking and, so visually interesting. Along with the logo, we thought, oh man, well, what? Now we're going to put some, crazy photo or painting behind that with the logo and then the Freakshow title. So we just went minimalist and basically just went with the purple color. John's a big purple fan. In fact, when you go to his studio, like there's like the drum baffles are all purple, and I think one of his floors is painted purple or something. It's crazy. It's sort of like walking into a hard rock cafe or something like that down to this place.
Oh, that's so cool. And yeah, I mean, thinking about that, I mean, with the previous album and obviously here with Freakshow, I mean, being able to have more of that minimalist approach, but obviously the intricacy that goes into the logo, I mean, that's how I kind of look at the band as well, too, because, it's it's not going crazy over the top progressive or anything like that, but there's so much intricacies that goes into all the songs that when you really pay attention to it, there's so much there. And to me, it's really great to be able to see that visually and audibly as well.
We really tried to not overplay. It's easy, especially with a modern DAW production. It's really easy to fill up a track. Okay, there's a pause in the vocal here. Let me put in a keyboard riff. Wait, there's no drum fill there. Let's put a bass fill in there. We tried to not do that and just kind of let the songs groove a little bit and just let there be some space. I think it's ultimately a more enjoyable listen that way because you're not being assaulted with, just every bar being filled up with information. And then when, the notes do come in and the solos do come in, hopefully they're interesting and, keeps you engaged.
Oh, absolutely. And I do love that approach so much. I mean, obviously with all of you guys, I mean, you're capable of playing so many amazing things on your respective instruments, but, coming together and realizing that the songs are more important than being able to show off what you can do, throughout the fretboards or the drum sets or all over the keys. I mean, I think it's just so important to be able to write for the songs, and it's great to see that you guys are continuing to follow that.
We always put melody above everything else and songwriting at the top of the list. John and I are both adamant about the fact that if you don't have a good song, who cares? Who cares how well you can play, how fast you can play, what cool synth you have, what cool guitar you have? Who cares what kind of wood your snare drum's made out of? If the song isn't good, that won't matter. Now, if you have a great song, hey, then we can talk about what kind of wood your snare drum is made of, because then that becomes interesting. So it's important to us, to always start with the song. And we have this ethic that the song has to stand up when you just play it with piano and voice or with just an acoustic guitar and voice. That's kind of our litmus test for it. If the song needs to have stacked up harmonies and, big reverb on the snare drum and huge synthesizers in order to sound like a great song, well, it's probably not a great song. It's probably you're dressing up something that maybe needs some more work at its foundation.
Oh, it's so true. And, again, it's great to see that, that was not a step that you guys had to worry about with this album because the songs are so good together and you were able to find all the right tones and sounds that really make this album the best that it can be, and making sure that you go from everything from the warm analog sound to picking out the right equipment and sounds on your end and just everything like that. I mean, just so much work went into this album, and again, the final product to me with Freakshow is just so incredible to hear. And when everyone else gets the chance to be able to check out this album 2 weeks from today on Frontiers Music, I hope they feel the same way that I do too, because it really is a step up from the first album, and knowing that you get what you wanted to accomplish in Dukes of the Orient, and just being able to put this out faster and knowing what you wanted to do with this, and it's got me excited to see where the band's going to go in the future.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that as well. I think this was definitely a milestone, and as John and I work together as the years go on, you get to know each other better as artists, and what the strengths of your partner is, and what the weaknesses are, what to avoid, and hopefully it just gets better from here. So let's hope for that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think with that's an amazing note to end on. And once again, thank you very much for taking the time to be able to talk to me about everything that's going on right now. And of course, again, the brand new album from Dukes of the Orient, Freakshow, which is coming out 2 weeks from today, August 7th, through Frontiers Music. I love this album from start to finish. It's great to be able to see this album came together as fast as it did, all things considered, and the fact that you're still able to promote this, and the album's still coming out in 2020, just everything coming together as it should, with a couple exceptions, but the fact that it is coming out and people are getting to hear it, and it is such a quality album, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be able to talk about all of it.
I appreciate it, Josh. It was a great interview. Let's talk again soon.